Okay, so we're going to try to unpack this whole Web3 thing.
Yeah.
You've been hearing it everywhere, right? I mean, it's like in the headlines, tech conferences, even just like in casual conversations,
Right.
And you've sent this podcast script over about Web3.
Yeah.
Because you want to know, like, what's really going on beyond just the buzzwords, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a deep dive into this.
Yeah.
And hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a much clearer understanding of, like, what Web3 is.
Right.
Its potential impact, and really why it matters to you.
Yeah. It's definitely more than just a buzzword.
Yeah.
It really represents a fundamental shift in how we think about and interact with the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that jumps out to me from this script is this whole idea of decentralization.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of taking power away from these huge tech companies, these massive tech giants, and kind of putting it back in the hands of users is fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of mind-blowing.
It is.
Is that even possible?
That's the core of Web3.
Okay.
Yeah, you can think of it as the next evolution of the internet, building on what came before, right? So Web 1 was static, mostly just consuming information.
Yeah.
Then came Web 2, giving us interactivity, user-generated content.
Right.
But it also led to the dominance of these huge platforms, we all know.
Totally.
Now Web 3 aims to move beyond that.
Okay.
Aiming for a more decentralized internet where users have more ownership and control.
So it's not just about, like, a new app or a faster connection.
Right.
It's about, like, changing the very fabric of the internet as we know it.
Exactly.
Kind of like rewriting the rules of the game.
Yeah, and this vision is built on some core principles.
Okay.
Decentralization, transparency, user ownership, and inclusion.
Okay.
These aren't just abstract ideas.
Yeah.
They're the guiding forces behind how Web3 is being built and what it aims to achieve.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But let's break down those principles a bit further.
Sure.
What do they actually look like in practice?
Okay, so let's start with decentralization.
Okay.
In Web 2, data is largely stored on servers controlled by big companies.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that data being distributed across a vast network of computers, owned and operated by individuals all over the world.
Yeah.
That's what decentralization aims to do.
Okay.
And it's much more resilient because of that structure.
Right.
No single point of failure.
So it's like going from a single massive library controlled by one entity to a system where everyone has their own books and can share and access information freely.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And that distributed ownership leads directly to the next principle, user ownership.
Oh.
In Web3 technologies like cryptographic wallets give you true ownership of your data and digital assets.
Okay.
Think of it like having a digital safe deposit box that only you hold the key to.
Now that's empowering.
Right.
But how does transparency play into all of this? It seems like it would be hard to keep things transparent in a system that's so distributed.
Well, this is where blockchain technology comes in.
Okay.
Think of it as a public ledger, a record of every transaction, constantly being verified and updated by this network of computers.
Okay.
Everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
Which builds trust and accountability.
So no more backroom deals or hidden agendas.
In theory, that's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah, blockchain's inherent transparency aims to create a level playing field and ensure that everyone plays by the same rules.
Okay, so we've got decentralization, user ownership, and transparency.
Yeah.
What about inclusion? How does that fit into the Web3 vision?
So one of Web3's promises is to create a more inclusive internet.
Okay.
One that's accessible to anyone regardless of location, background, or financial status.
Okay.
It aims to break down barriers and create opportunities for people who've traditionally been excluded from the digital economy.
That's a powerful idea.
It
But, these are all great principles in theory.
Mm-hmm.
How do they actually translate into, like, real-world technology? What makes all of this possible?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Several key technologies are driving Web3. And the most talked about is probably blockchain.
Okay.
It's the foundation on which everything else is built.
Most people probably associate blockchain with, like, cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Well, Bitcoin was one of the first and most well-known applications of blockchain. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Blockchain's potential goes far beyond digital currencies.
Okay.
Yeah, it's enabling things like smart contracts, decentralized storage, and much more.
You mentioned smart contracts.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for us a little bit?
Smart contracts are essentially self-executing agreements written in code and stored on the blockchain. They automatically carry out predefined actions when certain conditions are met. Think about a vending machine. You put in your money, choose your snack. And the machine automatically dispenses it without needing a human cashier. That's a simple example of a smart contract in action. But imagine the possibilities when you apply this concept to complex agreements and transactions.
Now that's what I call efficiency. But storing all this data, especially in a decentralized way, must be a challenge. How does Web3 tackle that?
That's where decentralized networks come in. Instead of relying on centralized servers owned by big companies, Web3 utilizes networks like the Interplanetary File System, or IPFS. It's a peer-to-peer system where files are distributed across a network of computers, making data more resilient and resistant to censorship.
So if one computer goes down, the data is still accessible from other nodes in the network.
Exactly.
It's like having multiple backups of your files, but on a global scale.
And then we have specific blockchains like Ethereum Polkadot and Solana. Each has unique characteristics and strengths. Contributing to the Web3 ecosystem in different ways.
I've heard of Ethereum. That's the one that kind of started it all.
Ethereum did pioneer the concept of smart contracts and is still the platform of choice for many decentralized applications. Then you have Polkadot, designed to connect different blockchains together.
Interesting.
Fostering interoperability. And Solana, known for its speed and efficiency in processing transactions.
It's like having different tools for different jobs. Each playing a vital role in the Web3 toolkit.
That's a great way to put it.
Cool.
And it's important to understand that all of this is built on something called distributed ledger technology, or DLT. It's a broader term that encompasses blockchain and other technologies that ensure transparency, security, and immutability in Web3.
It sounds like we've got this incredible foundation of technologies working together to power this new decentralized internet. But I think for a lot of people, it's still hard to grasp the practical applications. Where are we seeing Web3 being used in the real world? What could it actually do?
That's a great question. And the truth is, Web3 is already making its mark in a variety of industries. One of the most prominent is finance. Where decentralized finance, or DeFi, is offering an alternative to traditional financial institutions.
I've been hearing about DeFi. But to be honest, it all sounds a bit abstract. Can you give us a concrete example? How could DeFi impact someone's everyday life?
Imagine a small business owner in a developing country who doesn't have access to traditional banking services. With DeFi, they could use a platform like Of to borrow cryptocurrency against their assets. Essentially getting a loan without needing a bank.
So they're using their existing assets as collateral. But without all the red tape and restrictions of traditional banks.
Exactly.
It's pretty revolutionary.
It is. DeFi opens up a world of financial opportunities for people who have been excluded from traditional systems. And because it's built on blockchain, everything is transparent and accessible, which can help build trust and empower individuals.
So DeFi is one tangible example of Web3 in action.
What
about other sectors? How is Web3 impacting healthcare, for instance?
Healthcare is another area where Web3 has tremendous potential. Imagine secure patient records stored on the blockchain, ensuring privacy and data integrity. Or imagine transparent clinical trials that use blockchain to track data and prevent fraud.
So it's not just about making things more efficient. It's about giving patients more control over their health information. And improving the integrity of the healthcare system as a whole.
Precisely. And then we have supply chains, another area ripe for disruption. Platforms like VetChain are using blockchain to create transparent and immutable records of every step in the supply chain, from manufacturing to delivery.
So you could track a product from its origin all the way to the store shelf. Knowing exactly where it came from and what happened along the way.
Exactly. This can help businesses optimize their operations, reduce waste, combat counterfeiting, and give consumers more confidence in the products they buy.
I'm starting to see how Web3 can impact almost every aspect of our lives.
It can.
And speaking of impact, we can't ignore the buzz around NFTs and the metaverse.
Right.
How do those fit into the Web3 landscape?
So NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are unique digital assets that represent ownership of something on the blockchain. Think of them like digital deeds. It could be a piece of art, a collectible, or even virtual real estate in the metaverse.
I've seen the headlines about people paying millions for NFTs.
No, it's crazy.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is.
Is this really the future of ownership in the digital world?
It's a fascinating development, that's for sure.
Yeah.
NFTs challenge our traditional notions of ownership and value in the digital realm.
Okay. And what about DAOs? I know they're also a big part of the Web3 conversation.
DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations, are essentially organizations governed by smart contracts and community votes. Imagine a company run by algorithms and consensus rather than a traditional hierarchical structure.
So instead of like a CEO calling all the shots, you have a community of token holders voting on proposals and directing the organization's actions.
Yes, it is incredibly democratic.
That's wild.
And it allows for a much more distributed and participatory form of governance. One great example is Uniswap, a decentralized exchange that allows users to trade cryptocurrencies. It's governed by a DAO, meaning the community has a say in how the platform evolves and operates.
That's like taking the concept of shareholder voting to a whole new level.
It is.
And all of this ties into the concept of the metaverse.
Yes.
These immersive virtual worlds that are becoming increasingly popular. Web3 technologies are essential for building truly decentralized metaverses, where users own their assets and identities.
Exactly.
So instead of being controlled by like a single company, the metaverse is built and governed by the community itself.
That's the idea.
Wow.
Platforms like Decentraland and The Sandbox are showcasing the potential of Web3-powered virtual worlds. Users can buy and sell virtual land, create experiences, and interact with each other in these immersive digital spaces.
It all sounds very futuristic, but also a bit overwhelming.
It is.
With all this talk about decentralization and user ownership, I can't help but wonder about the potential downsides.
Sure.
What about privacy, for instance? Is Web3 really offering any improvements in that area?
That's a critical question, and Web3 does offer potential for greater privacy in several ways. The principle of user ownership means you have more control over your data. Instead of companies like Facebook or Google collecting and monetizing your information, you hold the keys to your digital identity.
So it's about shifting the balance of power back toward the individual.
It is.
But doesn't blockchain technology rely on a public ledger where anyone can see all the transactions? How does that protect privacy?
It's true that blockchain is a public ledger, but your personal information isn't directly tied to your transactions. Everything's identified using cryptographic hashes. Essentially unique digital fingerprints.
So someone looking at the blockchain wouldn't see my name or address or any other sensitive information?
Not directly. They might see a transaction associating with a specific wallet address, but without the private key associated with that wallet, they wouldn't be able to identify you.
That makes sense. But what about security? What's to stop someone from like hacking the blockchain and changing the record?
Well, that's where the immutability of blockchain comes in. Once a transaction is recorded and added to the blockchain, it's virtually impossible to alter or delete it. Each block is cryptographically linked to the previous block, creating a tamper-proof chain of records.
So it's like trying to change history. You'd have to change every record that came before it.
Exactly.
Which would be practically impossible, given the decentralized nature of the network.
Exactly. And decentralized storage systems like IPFS and Filecoin further enhance data resilience. Instead of relying on a single server that could be hacked or taken down, your data is distributed across a network of nodes, making it much harder to compromise.
This all sounds incredibly secure, but I know there are still cybersecurity risks associated with Web3. What are some things we need to be aware of?
You're right. No system is foolproof. Smart contracts, for example, can be vulnerable to bugs or vulnerabilities in the code. And phishing attacks, where scammers trick users into revealing their private keys, are still a major concern.
So while the technology itself might be secure, human error or malicious actors can still exploit weaknesses in the system.
Unfortunately, that's true. Security is an ongoing challenge in any digital environment. As Web3 evolves, we're constantly finding new ways to mitigate these risks and make the system more robust.
This is all very thought-provoking. It's fascinating to see how Web3 challenges our traditional models of data ownership and privacy.
It is.
But it also raises questions about its economic and social impact. How do you see Web3 reshaping our economic models?
Yeah.
Especially with the rise of, token economies.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Token economies are a fundamental part of Web3.
Okay.
Allowing users to be rewarded for their participation in the network.
Okay.
Instead of passively consuming content
What?
or using a platform, users can actively contribute and earn tokens for their efforts.
So it's like a shift from a consumer-driven economy to a more participatory one.
Exactly.
Where users are incentivized to contribute to the network's growth and development.
Exactly. You could earn cryptocurrency for providing computing power to the network.
Okay.
Creating content or even participating in governance decisions.
It sounds like a very different economic model than what we're used to.
It is.
What are some of the potential benefits and challenges associated with these new token economies?
One exciting aspect is the potential for digital inclusion.
Yeah.
Web3 and DeFi, for example, can provide financial services to people who don't have access to traditional banking systems.
Yeah.
This could be a game changer for people in developing countries or underserved communities.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
But are there any challenges we need to consider when it comes to accessibility and adoption?
Yeah.
After all, if you need a certain level of technical knowledge to participate in Web3,
right,
doesn't that create a new digital divide?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges with Web3 right now is its complexity.
Yeah.
The technology can be intimidating for non-technical users.
I can imagine.
And there's definitely a learning curve. Making Web3 more user-friendly and accessible is crucial for its wider adoption.
It's like the early days of the internet when you needed to know how to code to build a website.
Right.
We've come a long way since then.
Absolutely.
And hopefully Web3 will follow a similar path toward greater accessibility.
I agree. And as we strive for broader adoption, it's also crucial to address concerns about the environmental impact of blockchain technology,
Right.
particularly the energy consumption associated with mining.
That's something I've been wondering about.
Yeah.
Is there a way to make Web3 more sustainable?
There's a growing awareness of this issue within the Web3 community.
Okay.
And solutions are being actively explored.
Okay.
Some older blockchain networks, like Bitcoin, rely on energy-intensive consensus mechanisms called proof of work.
Right.
However, newer blockchains are adopting more sustainable alternatives,
Okay.
like proof of stake, which significantly reduces energy consumption.
So it sounds like the industry is aware of these concerns
They are.
and actively working on solutions to make Web3 more environmentally friendly.
Absolutely. And as the technology evolves, we're seeing even more innovative approaches to address the environmental impact, from utilizing renewable energy sources to developing more efficient consensus algorithms.
Okay.
The goal is to create a Web3 ecosystem that's not only technologically advanced, but also sustainable and responsible.
Yeah, that's really important.
It is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we've been laying the groundwork, exploring the core ideas and the tech behind Web3.
Right.
But I think the question that's probably on everyone's mind is, what does this all mean for me? Will I be using decentralized apps and managing my digital identity in the near future?
It's hard to predict the future with certainty, but I do think Web3 has the potential to impact everyone.
Okay.
Even those who aren't actively involved in the space right now. Think about how the internet itself has evolved over the past few decades. We've gone from simple web pages to a world of instant communication, social media, online commerce.
It's true.
Web3 represents another major leap forward.
Okay.
It could reshape everything from how we work and play to how we manage our finances and interact with governments.
It's mind-boggling to think about the potential scope of that transformation.
It is.
It seems like we're moving towards a future where the lines between the physical and digital worlds become increasingly blurred.
That's a great observation. And as we spend more and more of our lives online, the issues of data ownership, privacy, and control become even more critical.
Right.
Web3 offers a path toward greater transparency, autonomy, and user empowerment in this evolving digital landscape.
Okay, so let's circle back to the idea of Web3 becoming mainstream.
Sure.
What are some of the key factors that will determine how quickly this technology is adopted by the general public?
Yeah.
Because right now it still feels like something for tech enthusiasts and early adopters.
You're right. For Web3 to truly go mainstream, user experience is paramount.
Okay.
Right now, interacting with Web3 applications can be quite complex and cumbersome for the average user.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We need to make it simpler, more intuitive, and accessible to everyone regardless of their technical expertise.
So less command line interfaces and more user-friendly apps that feel as familiar and easy to use as the ones we have on our phones today.
We need to lower the barrier to entry and make Web3 as seamless and intuitive as possible. Another hurdle is scalability. As more users come on board, Web3 networks need to be able to handle the increased traffic and transaction volume without sacrificing speed or affordability.
Because if transactions start taking forever or costing an arm and a leg, people are going to lose interest quickly.
That's why developers are constantly working on solutions, like sharding and layer 2 scaling to improve the capacity and performance of blockchain networks. Sharding involves breaking down the network into smaller, more manageable pieces, while Layer 2 solutions move some transactions off the main blockchain to improve efficiency.
So it's about finding creative ways to handle the growing demands of a decentralized system.
It is.
It sounds like a constant game of catch-up.
It is a challenge, but it's one that the Web3 community is actively addressing. Scalability is crucial for Web3 to achieve its full potential.
Gotcha.
Of course, there's the regulatory landscape, which we touched on earlier. Governments and regulators around the world are still grappling with how to classify and regulate Web3 technologies. And their decisions could have a major impact on adoption.
It's a whole new world for regulators.
It is.
And it's understandable that they're proceeding cautiously. Like finding the right balance between fostering innovation and protecting consumers is tricky.
Absolutely. We need clear guidelines and frameworks that encourage responsible development while safeguarding against fraud and illicit activities.
It sounds like there's this delicate balancing act going on.
There is.
Between the Web3 community governments and traditional institutions. As we try to navigate this new territory.
That's a great way to put it. It's a complex interplay of forces, and the outcome is far from certain. But one thing is clear, Web3 is not going away. It's a force to be reckoned with. And it's going to have a profound impact on our lives, whether we're actively participating in it or not.
So for those who are intrigued by Web3 and want to learn more, where do they even begin? It can feel overwhelming with so much information out there.
I understand that feeling. There's a lot of noise. And it can be difficult to know where to start. A good first step is to familiarize yourself with the fundamental concepts. Blockchain technology, decentralization, and cryptocurrency.
Are there any particular resources you recommend?
There are many excellent resources available online. You can find introductory articles, videos, podcasts, even online courses that provide a foundational understanding of these core concepts.
And once you have that basic understanding, then what?
Then you can start exploring specific areas of interest. Whether it's DeFi NFTs, DAOs, or the metaverse, there's a whole universe of Web3 projects and communities to discover. A great way to learn is to actually try things out. There are many user-friendly wallets and decentralized applications available that allow you to dip your toes into the Web3 waters without needing to be a tech wizard.
So it's a learn-by-doing approach, which makes sense.
It does.
But as we dive deeper into this world, it's important to remember that Web3, like any transformative technology, comes with potential downsides and ethical considerations.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to have a balanced perspective and not shy away from the potential risks and challenges associated with this new paradigm.
For example, we've talked about the empowering aspect of decentralization. But what happens when there's no central authority to mediate disputes or enforce rules? How do we prevent malicious actors from taking advantage of the system?
That's a legitimate concern, and it's something that the Web3 community is actively working to address. We're seeing the development of new governance models and dispute resolution mechanisms designed for decentralized systems, aiming to provide fairness and transparency.
So instead of relying on traditional legal frameworks or centralized authorities, we're seeing the emergence of community-driven approaches to governance and conflict resolution in the Web3 space.
And blockchain technology itself offers a level of transparency that's never existed before. Every transaction is recorded on this immutable ledger, making it extremely difficult for bad actors to hide their activities.
So there's this inherent accountability built into the system.
There is.
And with decentralized identity systems, users have more control over their personal information.
Right.
And can choose how and with whom they share it. That could potentially reduce the risk of data breaches and identity theft.
It could.
Which is such a problem with the current internet.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
That's the hope, but it's also important to acknowledge the potential for these technologies to be misused.
Right.
Decentralization can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
While it empowers individuals, it can also make it more difficult to track down and hold accountable those who engage in illegal or harmful activities.
So there's this tension between individual freedom and collective responsibility.
There is.
That we need to grapple with as we move toward a more decentralized world.
Absolutely. And that's why open and honest conversations are crucial.
Yeah.
We need to establish ethical guidelines and frameworks that promote responsible innovation and safeguard against potential harm.
Okay.
Developers, policymakers, and the wider community need to collaborate to shape a Web3 landscape that benefits everyone.
Another concern that often comes up is the potential for Web3 to exacerbate existing inequalities. If access to technology and digital literacy are prerequisites for participation in this new economy, won't we see a widening of the gap between those who have and those who don't?
That's a very real concern, and it's something we need to be very mindful of.
Yeah.
We can't assume that Web3 will automatically level the playing field.
It's like any new technology or economic shift.
Right.
There's always a risk that those who are already privileged will benefit disproportionately.
Exactly.
Leaving others behind.
That's why we need to focus on accessibility, education, and inclusivity.
Okay.
We need to make Web3 technologies and resources available to everyone, regardless of their background or technical skills.
Yeah.
We need to actively bridge the digital divide and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in this new digital landscape.
So it's not just about building the technology.
Right.
It's about making sure that everyone can benefit from it.
Yes.
And that we don't create a new class of digital have-nots.
Precisely, it's about using these tools to create a more equitable and just society.
And how about the environmental impact? We talked about this earlier in relation to blockchain mining.
Yeah.
But it's worth emphasizing again.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that Web3 develops in a sustainable way that doesn't contribute to climate change?
Right.
Are the solutions you mentioned earlier enough to address that challenge?
It's a critical question, and one that the Web3 community is increasingly focused on.
Okay.
As we mentioned, there's been a shift toward more energy-efficient consensus mechanisms like proof of stake, which significantly reduces the energy consumption of blockchain networks.
Okay.
But it's not just about reducing the negative impact. It's also about exploring how Web3 can be a part of the solution.
So Web3 as a tool for environmental sustainability. How would that work?
Blockchain technology has the potential to be incredibly useful in tracking carbon emissions, incentivizing renewable energy production, and creating more efficient and transparent supply chains.
Yeah.
We can use these tools to create a more sustainable and resilient world.
It's encouraging to see that sustainability is becoming a priority for Web3 developers.
It is.
But ultimately, it comes down to individual choices and actions as well.
Absolutely. Technology can provide tools and solutions.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to use them responsibly and ethically.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits and challenges of Web3.
We have.
But I know there are also skeptics out there who believe that this whole thing is just hype or a passing fad.
Yeah.
What do you say to those who doubt the transformative power of Web3?
I understand their skepticism. There's been a lot of hype.
Yeah.
And it's natural to question whether Web3 can live up to the promises. It's important to remember that this technology is still in its early stages of development.
Okay.
It's like the early days of the internet when people were just starting to understand the potential of this new technology.
Right back then, many people dismissed the internet as a fad or a niche technology for academics and tech enthusiasts.
Exactly.
And look how wrong they were.
Exactly. We're still figuring out the best ways to use Web3.
Yeah.
And there will undoubtedly be bumps along the way.
Right.
But I believe the core principles, decentralization, transparency, and user ownership, are too powerful to ignore.
Okay.
They represent a fundamental shift in how we think about the internet and its role in our lives.
So while the current implementations might be imperfect, the ideas behind Web3 have the potential to reshape the internet as we know it.
That's the key takeaway. If we look at the history of technological innovation, we see a pattern of disruption and transformation.
Yeah.
New technologies emerge that challenge the status quo and create opportunities for those who are willing to embrace change.
It's true.
The printing press, the telephone, the internet.
Yeah.
These were all disruptive technologies that faced resistance and skepticism in their early days.
And yet, they ultimately transformed society in profound ways.
Exactly. And I believe Web3 has the potential to be just as transformative.
Right.
It's not just about changing the way we use technology. It's about shifting the balance of power, rethinking ownership and control in the digital age. It's about giving individuals and communities the tools to take back control of their digital lives.
Yes.
And create a more equitable and democratic internet.
That's the vision. And while there's still a long way to go, I'm optimistic that Web3 can help us get there.
I think it's important for those who are on the fence to keep an open mind. Yeah. Don't just dismiss it as hype or get caught up in the hype.
Right.
Take the time to learn about Web3, understand the underlying principles, and explore the potential for yourself.
I wholeheartedly agree. There's a lot to be excited about in this space.
Yeah.
And I believe it holds the key to a more positive and empowering future for all of us.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Web3.
We've explored the potential benefits, the challenges, the ethical considerations, and the reasons for both optimism and skepticism.
All right.
This is a complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
It is.
And there's still much to learn and discover.
It's an ongoing journey, and it's going to be an exciting one.
Before we move on to some real-world examples of Web3 in action, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
We've talked extensively about how Web3 can empower individuals and create a more decentralized internet.
Right.
But as we've also discussed, with greater freedom comes greater responsibility.
That's a crucial point. We can't just assume that decentralization will automatically lead to a better world.
Right.
We need to think carefully about how these new systems are governed, how we protect users from harm, and how we ensure that the benefits of Web3 are distributed equitably.
So the question I want to leave our listeners with is this. If Web3 gives individuals more control, will we be responsible enough to handle it? Will we use this power to create a more just and equitable world?
Right.
Or will we fall into the same patterns of inequality and exploitation that we see in the current system?
It's a question that we all need to grapple with as we navigate this new frontier.
Yeah.
The future of Web3 is being shaped right now, and it's up to all of us to ensure that it's a future we can be proud of.
We've spent a good amount of time, kind of exploring the what and the why of Web3.
Right.
Principles, the tech, the potential, and the concerns. Now I'm excited to get into the what does Web3 actually look like in action?
Right.
What are some real-world examples of this tech being used to solve problems and create new possibilities?
Well, there are countless fascinating projects out there already making waves. Yeah. One area where we're seeing significant innovation is in decentralized finance. Or DeFi. Platforms like Evolve Compound and Uniswap are changing the way people access financial services. Think lending, borrowing, trading. Yeah. All without the traditional gatekeepers like banks.
DeFi has been getting a lot of attention lately.
It has.
But I think for a lot of people, it's still this kind of nebulous concept.
Right.
Can you give us a concrete example
of
how DeFi is actually making a real-world difference?
Imagine a small business owner in a developing country.
Right.
Someone who doesn't have access to traditional banking services.
Right.
With DeFi, they can use a platform like Evolve to borrow cryptocurrency against their assets. Essentially getting a loan without a bank.
So they're essentially leveraging their existing assets as collateral.
Exactly.
But bypassing all the bureaucracy and often restrictive policies of traditional finance.
Precisely. DeFi is opening up financial opportunities for people who've been shut out of the traditional system. Yeah. And because it's built on blockchain, it's transparent and open, which can help build trust and empower individuals.
That's a great example of how Web3 can level the playing field and create more inclusive systems. Are there other sectors where we're seeing this kind of impact?
Absolutely. Supply chain management is another great example. We've touched on VitChain, but numerous platforms are using blockchain technology to track products from their origin to the consumer, ensuring authenticity, transparency, and accountability along the way.
I think about industries like food or pharmaceuticals, where knowing a product's origin and journey is crucial.
Yeah.
It makes sense that Web3 would find a foothold there.
You're right, and consumers are demanding more transparency.
Yeah.
Imagine scanning a QR code on a product.
Yeah.
And instantly seeing its entire journey from farm to table or factory to pharmacy.
That kind of granular detail would be a game changer.
It would.
Both for consumers and for businesses.
Right.
It's like having a window into the entire life cycle of a product.
Exactly.
Which should help reduce fraud, waste, and even prevent things like foodborne illnesses.
Exactly. And then there's healthcare, another sector ripe for Web3 disruption. Platforms like Patientory and Medical Chain are using blockchain to create secure and decentralized patient records, giving individuals much more control over their health information.
That's such a critical issue, especially with all the concerns about data breaches and privacy in healthcare.
It is. With Web3, patients can choose which healthcare providers have access to their records, and they can track how their data is being used.
Right.
It's about putting individuals back in control of their own health information.
I've also read about projects using Web3 for clinical trials.
Yeah.
Making the process more efficient and transparent.
It's an exciting area of exploration.
Yeah.
Platforms like DrugChain are using blockchain to track patient data and monitor the progress of clinical trials, which could help accelerate the development of new treatments and therapies.
So Web3 is being used to tackle some of the most pressing challenges in healthcare.
It is.
And, of course, we can't forget the metaverse.
Right.
Which everyone seems to be talking about these days.
I know, it's everywhere.
The metaverse is still in its early stages.
Yeah.
But the potential is massive.
It is.
We're already seeing platforms like Decentralized and the Sandbox creating these immersive virtual worlds.
Right.
Where users can own digital assets, build experiences, and interact in totally new ways.
Right.
Some are saying it's the future of social interaction, entertainment, even commerce. Do you think those claims are realistic?
It's hard to say for sure, but the building blocks are certainly there. Web3 is essential to building truly open and decentralized metaverses. And as VR and AR technology continues to advance, these virtual experiences are only going to become more compelling and realistic.
As we move into a world where the lines between the physical and digital are blurring, the metaverse seems like a natural evolution.
It does.
But are there potential downsides to this shift?
Absolutely. As with any new technology, we need to address the potential risks and challenges thoughtfully. Privacy, security, and issues like addiction or abuse in virtual spaces need to be taken seriously.
And how do we prevent the metaverse from replicating or even amplifying the problems we see online today? Like harassment and discrimination. It's like we're building a whole new society in the digital realm. And we need to make sure it's built on a foundation of inclusivity and respect.
I agree. We need to think carefully about the design and governance of these virtual worlds to create spaces that are safe, inclusive, and equitable for everyone. We can learn from the mistakes of the past and build a better future in the metaverse.
This deep dive has been incredibly illuminating. It seems like Web3 is touching so many aspects of our lives.
It is.
From finance and healthcare to supply chains and the metaverse. And with all the projects already underway, the potential for future innovation seems almost limitless.
It's an exciting time to be following this space. We're truly just scratching the surface of what's possible. As more people get involved and developers continue to push the boundaries, I think we can expect even more transformative applications of Web3 in the years to come.
So as we wrap up, what's your key takeaway for our listeners? What do you hope they'll remember from this conversation?
I think the key takeaway is that Web3 is more than just hype. It's a powerful technology with the potential to create a more decentralized, equitable, and transparent internet. But it's not a magic solution, and it's important to engage with both the opportunities and the challenges that Web3 presents.
As we move into this new era, it's crucial to have informed discussions about how we shape these technologies to benefit all of humanity.
Absolutely.
It's a collective responsibility.
Well said. The future of Web3 is being written right now. And it's up to all of us to make sure it's a future we can be proud of.
That brings our deep dive into Web3 to a close.
It does.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the fundamental principles to the real-world applications and the potential implications for the future.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you to our expert for sharing your incredible insights and knowledge with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration of Web3. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. The world of Web3 is constantly evolving.
It is.
So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, get involved.
Absolutely.
Who knows? You might just be the one to build the next groundbreaking Web3 application.
You might.
Until next time, this is The Deep Dive signing off.